Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the channel. I hope you are having an amazing Friday wherever you are. Saturday, maybe in some countries. Tata Steel round 11 was insane. We had a crazy game between Gukesh and Wei that ended in a draw. Crazy, maybe not being the right word, but they had a draw. So, someone can catch Gukesh. He just made a draw. So, if someone wins, if a couple of people win, they either tie his score or remain just a half point ahead. They can't go completely past him. He had a half point lead. But a draw at this late stage might be a slip up for with some players in the form that they are. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, we're going to cover some games. The first one being an all Dutch affair in Tata Steel. It is Anish Giri and Max Varmerdon. Max Varmerdon has had a rough event. Him and Jordan van Forest have been in the bottom seven. Anish Giri moved into the top seven with a win a couple rounds ago, and they had their match today. Anish Giri with the white pieces, and he started off with e4. If I can get it on the board, e4. We had e5, knight to f3, knight to c6, and bishop to c4, an Italian opening, a very classical opening. Now, some of you may like my analysis, some of you may hate my analysis. I'm going to try to go through these games quite quickly. I don't want to waste your time. I don't want this video to be too long. So we're going to go through these games quite quickly. We're going to focus in on a couple of the key moments. So, knight to f6. Now, some of you may look to play the knight attack, which may lead to the fried liver. But we don't get that. We get d3, classical main line, bishop to c5, knight to c3, h6, castles, d6, knight to a4, chasing the dark squared bishop. It retreats, and we don't capture it just yet. It's not going anywhere. Bishop to d4, pinning the knight. We can allow the pin to exist for just a moment. Bishop retreats to h5, which may look silly, but it's a natural move. You don't want to get kicked with a tempo, because h3 is quite a useful move to white in some positions, and you're maintaining the pin. And it's now a lot harder to break it. White does indeed capture the knight. We get a takes b6, queen to e2, queen d7, and very creative queen to e3. Now the pin is broken. Short castles, h3, and black breaks in the center with d5. We get takes, knight takes, and lovely tactical find here by Anish Giri. Your queen is hanging, but so is your queen, and then both rooks will hang. So literally the game could go like this, where you take a queen, I take a queen, you take a rook, I take a rook, but then there's nothing better, so what you might escape like this. Oh, sorry, you shouldn't escape like this. We just take the knight, and we grab a knight. This is how the game could go, where everything gets traded off. We don't quite get that, so we get the knight takes, the queen slides out the way, and now we have to move our queen, or we can remove the knight. We remove the knight, queen takes, and we trade off a couple of knights. And some of you might look at this position and notice, oh, the bishops are opposite color, it's heavy pieces, I'm not so sure about this. But, I don't know if you noticed, Anish Giri is up a pawn. It's 3-3 on the king side, but there's a 4 on 3, of which there are double pawns on the queen side. So he's going to look to massage that advantage. It's not completely winning, but we trade queens, and we get the dark squared bishop out. Black infiltrates with the rooks, exactly what you're meant to do. Get those pigs on the 7th to try and eat everything. Black gives up their double pawn, so now they're down 2 pawns. But you can't protect everything, so black gets a pawn back. And you only up 1 pawn. We attack the bishop. It retreats to the wrong square. Very important here, the best move is bishop c4. Tie yourself to this bishop, to this pawn. You protect it, and you make progress very hard, and it controls lots of key squares. Bishop to g6 is the wrong retreating move, because now we get bishop to d3, centralizing the dark squared bishop, and you might think, well, it's opposite bishops, it can't be that bad. It is that bad, because opposite colored bishops favor the attacking side. You are not able to control everything. Black makes a nonchalant rook move, and there is only one move that is winning here. Well, not only one move. The advantage is 3.3. And it is that large for one specific reason. The move before, it's just plus 1.1. And you need to play king g8. That is the key move in this position, because then you would have rook a e1, bishop d3, you get this bishop to go back here. Then like rook 1 e3, and then bishop to c4. It wants this. This is what the computer wants. It thinks this is the way to hold for black. You see putting the bishop here on c5, c4. But rook a6, now you can play g4. And we go for the king. Now you get king g8, but it's too late. And we can start targeting pawns and try to, like, low-key, this bishop nearly is trapped. It's nearly trapped. So you have to commit to this. But we can grab it. You obviously can't take. The rook is protecting the pawn. Just, cautious. So now you're down a pawn. A slight inaccuracy here from Anish Giri. But when they play bishop to f3 and blunder, rook c7, it's game over. Because you can give a check. I can move out the way. My other rook is coming, and you're just about getting mated as we break apart the defenses of the king. There's nowhere for you to go. If you go there, you get mated. So this pawn that survived through fire with g4, captured here, went here, did not get captured again, and now checks the king, wins the game for Anish Giri. We move on to a sensational game here. Vladimir Fedoseev, who played a couple rounds ago one of the craziest games I've ever seen in my life. Just throwing pawns and putting pieces where they don't belong. He sits down and we get d4, knight to f6, c4, e6, knight to f3, d4, queen's gambit declined, and we go for a Catalan. We've seen the Catalan employed several times in this tournament. I'm going to remind you out of obligation, I do have a video on how to play the Catalan. So, captures, knight, bishop to g2. I don't know why I said knight. That's not a knight, that's a bishop. And then we're playing like this. So, the main idea in this position, when you capture on this move, is you're going to play b5 to protect that pawn. You make this weak, but you're going to try and hang on to this pawn. That's why black plays a4, and we give the check, and we can play it like this. This is the method black has chosen to employ. You kind of nullify this bishop as much as you can. You get your dark square bishop out here, and you don't need to trade. Like, this is... handing this to black is maybe not the best idea. So we don't do that. So bishop to c3, nice move. You move on the same line, but you make sure the d pawn is protected. Castles, knight to e5, opening up your beautiful Catalan bishop that at the moment just sees rocks. But, now it is open. But it's a strike in the center, c5. Short castles, knight comes out, and you might think, can't I do this? And win a pawn. Bishop takes c3. What about the rook? Bishop takes b2. This rook. And you might think, well, what about this? c3. Now you're in trouble. Because this pawn is coming through. That one's going to fall. Is black down that much material? I think this is fine when you've got a pawn that's just there. This one's going to fall. This bishop now has no more purpose. Anyway, knight to a3. Now we capture like this. The knight blockades the center. We remove that knight, tripling the pawns on the c-file. And they're all going to fall. That's going to fall. That's going to fall. If the knight moves, that falls. So let's see what white decides. So we take like this. Bishop comes out then to protect the c4 pawn. Have you ever seen a pawn structure like this, where you've got white, black, white, white, black, white, black? Like the meatiest sandwich of pawns you've ever seen in your life. What do you guys like on your sandwiches? Let me know. Queen d4. Queen f6. We trade the queens. And look at what Mendonca does here. This is so creative for me. Like, in a heartbeat, if I was playing with black, I'd be like, well, knight takes. But I would hang a pawn. So, when you play queen f6, you calculate, well, I can't take with the knight, so I probably wouldn't play queen f6. Well, because taking with the g-pawn is stupid. It's not. You take with the g-pawn, and then you create this imbalance. Now you can play f5, and when they bring the king, you can bring your rook over, and they can bring kings. But look at black's rooks, just look so dominant. White's rooks are staring at nothing. Well, they're staring at a lot of stuff, and that's the problem. They're not open on open files. And this knight, yes, it's always putting pressure on this pawn. So this rook is tight, so the knight dominates it. You can never just snap take, because it's a bad move. If white doesn't play e3 and instead elects to take, this is borderline winning for black. It's 0.06 on the computer. You might think, well, it's better for white. Not that much. Anyway, e3. Actually, ironically enough, bishop takes d5 is the best move in this position. Instead of e3, now the rook infiltrates. Now you've got to return the bishop home. And look at that. Knight to f6. That bishop can fall. We grab the knight. Lovely little tactical sequence. That bishop falls, and we save the rook. You might say, why couldn't I take the rook? Well, bishop takes c4 is more potent. 2 rooks, 2 pieces for the rook. It's probably winning for black in this position. So you got to be careful about that. So bishop takes, rook over, we attack. Eventually we trade the rooks, but on black's terms. And we're just going to have a really powerful knight. This is when the knight is better than the bishop. We can grab this pawn, you can grab it. We get a fork. Ironically enough, knight to f2 is a mistake. King d1 is the right move. I don't know why the computer thinks... I'm looking at the computer evaluation, right? It says knight f2 is the best move, followed by knight c1. I do not understand why it says knight f2 check is a bad move. It's still -5. Because the king goes here, you probably repeat moves. Yeah, move 33 to make sure you gain time. Just make sure it's completely winning. You allow them to grab a couple of pawns, but the rook is always better than the bishop, and it will corral the pawns. And here, Leon Luke Mendonca wins as Vladimir Fedoseev resigns. Pentala Hare Krishna, Alexei Sarana. Another good game. A couple of players who are really struggling. d4, knight f6, e6, knight f3, d5, and now knight to c3, the traditional Queen's Gambit decline, not a Catalan. And here h6, which is a move, Gotham Chess, I think. No, he doesn't play the h6 Queen's Gambit, he plays the a6. That's what he plays sometimes. Anyway, h6, e3, normal stuff. We trade pawns in the center, mirror image capture. And you would think, well, I played b. You would think the bishop goes here. Doesn't go there. Very instructive. Again, I couldn't find the word there. The English is not Englishing on this Friday night. And they just castle, they develop their pieces. It's pretty close, no one taking massive amounts of space. We've got to be aware of tactics on the c-file against the queen. Queen slides over. We offer a trade of knights, but we don't want to trade knights. And it gets very cagey as the players start moving towards each other. So it's going to be who's going to blink first. And it's white. E4 is not a good move. In fact, what the computer says is, yeah, we've had enough of the tension. Play bishop takes c4. Play bishop takes c4, rook c4, and play knight d2. And just get everything off. We've had enough of the tension, just get everything off. e4 is too much. The bishop comes in, now you can plant the knight, you make it, and now you see, everything happens. But what a move there. I don't know if this was missed, or they just calculated wrong, Serrano, if you wanted to go for this because it's dynamic. But you can trade here, and then there's this lovely sacrifice when you take here, is you attack the queen. And it's a lovely move, because you can protect this rook, but then the rook behind you falls. So you have to take the bishop, and then they win the rook. So they're up in exchange, and you may grab another pawn and have 2 passed pawns, 3 passed pawns, but this one's well blockaded for the moment. But is it going to be enough? Because at the end of the day, you are playing a rook down. So we trade queens, maybe not always the best move. Look at this, so clever. Obviously, you can't recapture the bishop because of the rook. But, we can push the pawns. You never really got rid of that bishop, and that rook versus knight, the rook is always going to win, and the rook does win. Black wins. Pentala Hare Krishna, I think, wins his first game of the tournament. He's had a really rough tournament. And the final game, the big boss game, if I can get the screen right again. The big boss game. Fabiano Caruana, Prague Dananda. Prague needs to win this to tie Gukesh, if I'm not mistaken, if I've got the... No, Nordbeck would have tied him. I think Prague now moves half a point behind if he wins this game. And Fabiano Caruana is trying to win to haul in Prague and Nordbeck. He's trying to get them closer. It's going to take a lot for him to beat Gukesh, but he needs to win basically all 3 of these games. So both of these players have a lot to play for. And when you have a lot to play for, we play the English, and we play this, which effectively turns into a Queen's Gambit decline. Queen's Gambit decline, but the exchange variation, which is generally accepted to be slightly better for white. Reason being, white has got 2 central pawns, black only has 1. That's the general gist of it, and you might say, why don't they take all the time then with the pawn in the Queen's Gambit decline? Because you don't need to. So the players develop pieces for the first 2 moves. We get long castles. Most people in this position, in fact the engine says so, is to play short castles. but you're in a Queen's Gambit declined. It's so solid, and from this position, these players will probably make a draw. So you need to fight. So Fabiano Caruana, long castles, picks up his king, and instead of going short, goes the completely opposite direction and goes long. And that says, well, Prague says, all right, fine. You want to fight, let's fight. This is the scene in the movie where it's like, I'm not locked in here with you, man. You're not locked. I'm not locked in here with you. You're locked in here with me. Because they are now in for a fight. This is, Kingsman-esque when he slams the door in the bar closed and they trade a bunch of pieces. I'm fearing for this white king. The pawns on the queen side eradicated the position. That pawn is stupid. This pawn can be attacked so easily. White never got going in time. The position is still level, but as white, you've got to be so careful. So we look to trade the pawn and look at black. I'll trade, but on my terms. We move the white bishop. Now the queen retreats, we capture, and we bring the rook. And that's like, okay, that's a target. I can target that. No, you can't. Okay, I can target the rook. No, you can't. I can bring in my rook. Okay, fine. I'm going to take stuff. Queen slides over. Okay, now my knight comes in. Black's pieces are just alive. Every time white creates a threat, black stops it. And the white king is just not comfortable at all. You're sitting there under your desk. You've got one. Like, have you ever been in school? So those of you who've been to school, and you do that bomb warning. You're trying to hide under your desk while the dude is sitting on top of it, and you're hoping he's not going to find you. Like, this is not going to protect the white king at all. Rook slides over, the bishop retreats. White has nothing, and you can't continue to do nothing, and eventually it catches with Fabiano Caruana. In low time, he makes a mistake. Queen to e3. Queen e2 was the best. One square difference. Instead of going here, you need to go here. One square of difference, and that's because Queen e2, King h8, just getting off this diagonal, Knight to f3. Sorry, not Knight to f3, Rook f3. Sorry, I'm reading off the engine here. Rook f3, Bishop c6. What? I must be reading that wrong. It says Bishop to c6, yeah. I don't know why. Sorry, I just couldn't read that for a second. And this is the position you would play. Queen e3 is wrong because you can now take. The knight can capture the pawn. A move that looks impossible, but it works out tactically. The rook slides over. Not going to be good enough. The bishop comes in, and one final mistake. It's not the first mistake that kills you. It's the second one. Bishop d3 is wrong. The knight can retreat. Now everything is just looking at everything. Yes, there's a check, and it's a fork. King h8. You can grab this. And you can even get the skewer. I can grab the knight. And Fabiano Caruana extends his hand and resigns to Pragnananda Ramesh Babu in a sensational game. Now we're going to have a quick cut, and then I will show you the standings. And we're back. Yes, so here are the standings. You can see it is led by Gukesh, but he's only half a point ahead of Pragnananda Ramesh Babu and Nordebek Abdusatorov. Nordebek and Gukesh making draws today. Prag, as you saw earlier, winning an incredible game. So Gukesh, here's the standings. If he wins both games, he's the champion. If he wins one game and makes a draw, Pragnananda and Nordebek must win both games to tie him. If Gukesh draws both games, Prague and Nordebek must either win at least one game to get a tie first. It is incredibly close at the top. Gukesh cannot afford to slip up. Neither can Prague or Nordebek if they want to win Tata Steel. That is as far as we go. Vladimir Fedoseev, Anish Giri, and Wei Yi all on 6 points. They're out. Basically, they're out of the running. They cannot catch Gukesh. They have to score 2 wins, and Gukesh has to score 2 L's for them to catch Gukesh, and probably Prague and Nordebek. If Gukesh loses both games, probably they will go past him. So it is incredibly tight at the top between the top 3. We've got a 3-way race for the title, but let me know who you think has got the edge, and don't say Gukesh.